Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they can do what they want, when they want. And in today's episode, guys, we're dealing with two over-the-top mother-in-laws. And Opie tells a story about her psycho mother-in-law who absolutely hates her and keeps breaking into their house. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Okay, so this is gonna take a bit of explaining before I can tell you about the incident. First off, I was recommended to share this by a friend who frequently reads through these types of subreddits. She told me that if I ever broke and needed to vent about my mother-in-law, this was the place to go. Second, this is not the first time my mother-in-law's done something like this. This is simply the most recent one and the one that scared me the most. And third off, my husband is a site inspector and he travels around the state somewhat frequently. This leads me to staying at home alone every once in a while, depending on how far he has to travel. I'm also 24 years old and I've been married to my husband, also 24, for almost a year now. We dated from the time we were 17 to when we were 22 and then got engaged. Now, I don't think my mother-in-law has ever liked me, though she was never this bad until we finally got married. She was always somewhat friendly, if anything. When I first started dating my husband, we were about to graduate high school. He had broken up with his previous girlfriend almost 2 months prior, and apparently, mother-in-law liked her a lot more than she likes me. She was taller, more social and outgoing, more mature, etc. I couldn't really blame her as I had terrible self-esteem issues at the time, and even somewhat agreed with her. My husband assured me that he didn't think that about me, and that his mom was just upset because she hadn't gotten to know me yet. Mother-in-law would continue to make snide remarks, though they were easily dismissed if you weren't listening for them. Fast forward a bit, and I start culinary school, and I became somewhat closer to my father-in-law because of his love for cooking. Mother-in-law would comment how I apparently liked him better than her, though I shook it off. It started out harmless. As time went on, she refused to ever spend time with me alone, though she would spend time with my brother-in-law's girlfriend and even his boyfriend after he came out. She only had a problem with me. I was hurt, and I brought it up to her once. She then accused me of being jealous of them, and when I told her this wasn't the case, she launches into an attack on my entire personality, telling me how I wasn't fit for her son, how I'm an ugly person inside, etc, etc. I went home crying, and my husband eventually forced her to apologize to me. But the apology wasn't genuine. That's what really drove me from trying to seek a relationship with her. The snide comments would continue, more harshly, though I never really took them to heart. My mother-in-law would eventually start losing things of mine or accidentally breaking them. And who knows, they could have been accidents. But with how they were escalated, I don't think they ever were. It started with losing small things, like bracelets that I would ask her to hold on to while I was cooking, that she had set down somewhere and couldn't find. It then moved on to books and culinary tools and pictures I printed out and put into photo albums to show off at family holidays. It eventually escalated to my cat. And yes, she did manage to lose my cat during the time she was house-sitting for us. My husband and I had gone off for a weekend-long vacation, and we asked mother-in-law to watch our cat at the time. Mother-in-law doesn't like cats that much, but she agreed anyways. We had a nice weekend, and we came back to find that mother-in-law had accidentally let the cat out of the house to do its business, as dogs do, never to be seen again. We checked with local shelters and listings online, and he was nowhere to be found. I really thought it was an accident, until mother-in-law ended up in a conversation with brother-in-law's girlfriend about how much she hated cats, despised them, actually. She pointed out my cat specifically, talking about how annoying and clingy he was, and then seemed to realize he was gone now. She then added, "It's a shame you two let him out though," as if she had forgotten that she was the one to lose him. And that might have been an accident, but what started happening after wasn't. Husband and I got engaged, and mother-in-law was not pleased. She made a comment saying, "Well, if this is what he wanted, I guess," and half-heartedly welcomed me to the family. A week or so later, she seemed to have had a change of heart, and she invited me to my husband's grandmother, aunt, and cousins to throw me a tiny engagement party and talk about wedding plans. Hearing that, I agreed, excited she was finally including me in something. So I went to meet the cousins, aunts, and grandmother. I was wrong to be excited. I had every aspect of my body and personality picked apart by everyone in that house, and I got told how I should change so that my husband wouldn't leave me for someone else. I was then told things like, you should just give up anyways, and to spare them all the effort, and to just disappear, and to never come back. They eventually moved on to talking about the wedding, without letting me have a word in. Now these weren't solid plans, just musing, but it made me so sick to hear them talking about what was gonna be mine and my husband's day, as if it was their day. They talked about having all their family and friends over to see husband get married to a lovely bride, with a comment about how they'd love to change me up a bit before then, and how they would have a mother-son dance, with mother-in-law in a dress similar to mine to complete a set, and have us with matching hairstyles and veils. They then started talking how I wouldn't have to worry about anything, despite my protest. It got to the point where I just walked out of there and drove home. That's when mother-in-law called to tell my husband how rude I was to storm out of there. After I told him what happened, he made sure to tell her about how overwhelmed I was, and how rude I'd found some of her comments. Soon after, talks about me having a baby with my husband began, and mother-in-law was obviously opposed to the idea, though if it had to happen, she'd obviously have to be very involved. Because after all, she was going to be a grandmother. When I told her that we weren't planning on having a kid that soon, she seemed to change her mind. I just had to give her a grandchild. She wouldn't accept anything else. Every moment around her then became, "Are you pregnant yet? If you are, I should be the first to know if you're pregnant." We ended up arguing about it, with my husband breaking us up and telling mother-in-law that she wasn't going to talk about this with us until we welcomed the conversation. She listened to that at least. Now, I thought it was all calm. The only things that happened were small pieces of furniture being rearranged or photo albums and pieces of clothing being left out. My husband and I figured that it was just us moving the furniture a bit, since they weren't moved much, or leaving our albums out, or me forgetting to put my clothes up after doing the laundry. I'd eventually find out that this wasn't the case. Then came our wedding. Mother-in-law tried to have her way with everything, though I managed to grow a pair and tell her off, and tell her that this was not for her to plan. She ends up trying to wear a white dress to my wedding, and she had a couple of the flowers I had in my bouquet in her hair. She also tried to invite family and friends that we didn't want there, and tried to have her mother-son dance. I don't think she understood that there wasn't a father-daughter dance because neither my husband or I enjoyed the idea of that. She even tried to have our cake changed, though that didn't happen because I was making it. The wedding ended up being stressful due to having to try to micromanage mother-in-law to make sure she didn't do anything to ruin our wedding. The only thing she managed to do other than stress us out was spill red wine on me after getting drunk. She seemed to calm down after that, though I did notice a couple of small things going missing in my home. Until tonight. So my husband was across the state, and he was supposed to be staying in a motel due to how long the drive took. I had mentioned it in passing to my brother-in-law and his boyfriend, and my mother-in-law must have heard from them. I was in the living room, which is off the hallway where the front door is, watching TV, while cuddled up in my blanket. I was ready to pass out on the couch. I then started to hear rapid pounding on the door. To say I freaked out is an understatement. I do have a fear of sudden loud noises, and almost screamed. I covered my mouth though. The pounding just continued, and I was terrified. I thought somebody was trying to break in. Now, I don't believe I've mentioned this, but I'm tiny. I'm 5'2" and 120 pounds soaking wet. If somebody did manage to break into the house and they saw me, I would be done for. So I get on the ground and just crawled across the living room just to get out of sight of the window that overlooked the front yard. I end up hiding in a closet, scared for my life. I was trying to unlock my phone, but I couldn't. And that's when I hear mother-in-law cussing. Apparently her house key wasn't working, due to the fact that we had changed the knobs and the locks about a week ago. When I realized it was her, I was pissed. I get out of the closet, march towards the door, and I start screaming. Mother-in-law screamed back because she hadn't expected anyone to be there. I then let her know that I was calling the police and that she was trespassing and harassing me. I then asked her what the F she was doing here at midnight of all times, and why the hell was she trying to get inside? Mother-in-law did not answer. She told me she didn't owe me an answer, and I saw her running back towards her car through the window in the door. I didn't call the police. I wouldn't have proof that she was knocking. Instead, I called my husband and told him what happened, and my husband was pissed. I admitted that I was terrified, and he got into the car to drive 5 hours home. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm still shaken up. And I'm in my room with almost every door in the house locked. I think I know why things are out of place in our home now. Who knows how long she's been coming into our home while we were gone. We knew we didn't misplace things or leave them out, though we didn't want to sound crazy. I also don't want to sound crazy for typing this entire thing out, but no sane person does what my mother-in-law did tonight. And the thing is, I don't know how she thought I wasn't home. My car was in the driveway. I don't know why she's been doing this, but I'm freaked out and I need to get it out. Update. So my husband came home, and he immediately calls his brother to have him go with him to mother-in-law's and record the whole thing. This confused me until he got back. What happened was basically this. My husband gets to mother-in-law's and asked her if she was at our home. She denies she was there. And that's when my husband responds with, "Actually, Jen called while you were banging on the door." I just watched the video, and it seemed like the color just drained from her face. She starts stuttering excuses, and my husband starts raising his voice. He then threatened to have her arrested for attempting to break in with the intent to harm me. Mother-in-law basically begged him not to, and he told her he wouldn't, as long as it did not happen again. But he informed her a police report was going to be made. He also added that his relationship with her now is going to be very, very strained, if it existed at all. He then added that what happened with me and her was up to me, and that he wasn't going to change whatever I decided. My husband then came home with a backup hard drive and the video sent to him by brother-in-law. He spent a few minutes uploading the video to the hard drive, and then sat me down to talk to him. He asked me if I wanted any sort of relationship with her. I told him no, and he agreed with me. He then told me that she wasn't going to be allowed in the house again. I told him that we should set up cameras, get a Ring doorbell, and write a letter to her to make sure that it's in writing that she can't come back here. My husband did agree with me and told me to take a nap, and that we would go look at cameras tonight. Update number 2. It's been about 2 months or so since I've posted, and nothing's happened except passive-aggressive voicemails that stopped after I blocked her number. And then Monday happened. So to make a long story short, mother-in-law broke into our house. I wasn't there this time, since my husband started bringing me with him to his jobs. To sum it up, she basically trashed our home. She tore down the pictures on the wall and she smashed them. She also went through the kitchen and found all my baking supplies and stuffed them into a trash bag. She then went to our room and she left with my jewelry box. We know this because the cameras installed sent everything to our phones. We had one in the front hallway, one in the kitchen by the back door, and one in the front door. We started driving home as soon as we got the camera footage. We called the police as soon as we got there and showed them the footage from the cameras. Another long story short, mother-in-law was arrested and she was bailed out by father-in-law because she had to go to work. Don't know when we're getting a court date for her trashing our house, but we've been assured that we're getting one. Now, I'm pissed about mother-in-law breaking in, but I'm even more pissed that she stole my effing cake pans and jewelry and basically destroyed our home. And the thing is, she didn't take them and sell them or use them. She threw them in the dumpster down the road. I told my husband that I didn't feel safe in our house anymore and that I wanted to move. He agreed, and we're looking at places. We've already started packing up and we're looking to buy instead of rent this time. We're also looking at getting another cat and maybe even a dog, because there won't be a mother-in-law to let them out of the house, so there won't be much to worry about. There will be no repeats of last time. But we're safe, and mother-in-law hasn't come near us since she was bailed out. We're hoping it stays that way. Yeah, so mother-in-law is definitely unhinged, guys, and creeping into being dangerous territory. And thank goodness for cameras, right? And I'm also glad that OP and her husband are moving, and I think I'd take it one step further and get a restraining order or something. I just hope they can keep their new address from getting to mother-in-law because, again, she sounds like she can be dangerous. Like, I'm just baffled at why she kept breaking into OP's home and doing what she did. Like, what the heck was her end goal? So my 3-year-old daughter has several severe food allergies. Peanuts and eggs are the worst. She also can't have dairy or bananas. Now, the thing is, my mother-in-law is super obsessed with my daughter. This is our only child, and mother-in-law's only grandchild, so I try to be understanding. I don't say anything about it when mother-in-law buys $300 dresses that my daughter will only wear once. I've encouraged a relationship between them. I've let mother-in-law have her way on holidays. I've never actually left them alone though. I can't explain exactly, but it just doesn't feel right. Mother-in-law has also not pushed for alone time like I've read about here. She has offered to babysit, but she's let it go and we declined. So on to the story. Mother-in-law has always doubted my daughter's allergies. She's insisted that her princess of a granddaughter could never have something wrong with her. However, she's never tested to see if it's true. Until today. Mother-in-law was over playing dress up with my daughter and I had a horrible headache. So I asked mother-in-law to watch my daughter so I could lie down for an hour. She agreed. 20 minutes later, I'm woken up to mother-in-law shrieking that there's something wrong with the baby. I go running to my daughter's room and she's gasping for breath and her lips are turning blue. I scream at mother-in-law to call 911 and use an EpiPen on my daughter. My daughter was able to take a deep breath, and that's when I noticed she smelled like banana. The paramedics show up quick as we live about a mile from the fire station. They start an IV and give my daughter medication so she can breathe. I tell one of the paramedics that my mother-in-law fed my daughter something, and he found a part of a cookie on the floor. He then confronts mother-in-law, who confesses that she gave my daughter a peanut butter banana cookie because she didn't know it would hurt her. So I text my husband and ride to the hospital with my daughter. They admitted her for observation and my husband met us there. My mother-in-law called him wailing how she was just trying to show us that nothing's wrong with my daughter and that allergies we assumed she had weren't real. And this is where it gets outrageous. That bitch admitted to my husband that she's been making allergen lace cookies for more than a year. She bakes a huge batch and then freezes them. She then puts one in her purse every time she sees my daughter, just in case she gets a chance to slip it to her. And hearing that, I can't even wrap my head around this. My daughter's asking when mother-in-law is gonna come and see her. She wants to show grandma her pretty bracelet, which is the hospital band with stickers on it. And I'm so devastated right now. I never suspected that mother-in-law would do something like this. The hospital has reported it to the police. A detective's gonna come tomorrow to take statements and talk about the next step. Update number 1. So the detective just left and he's got copies of everything mother-in-law sent to my husband, plus 11 voicemails she left me last night. My phone's been off. Apparently several of her voicemails were just her losing her mind, screaming that she's gonna off herself because she can't live without her baby. The detective doesn't know what's gonna happen because he's never seen this before. But for right now, they're gonna take her into custody due to the threats of ending her life. The district attorney will have to look at the case next week. She also went on a huge shopping spree. My husband went home to get a few things for daughter and our front porch was crammed full of new toys. My husband loaded them up and after lunch, daughter's gonna give them away to other kids in the hospital. My daughter's also doing great. We're at an amazing children's hospital. She's getting doses of Benadryl for a lingering full-body rash that calms things down quite a bit. Overall, she's pretty happy, but she's still asking for mother-in-law. The counselor suggests telling my daughter, "Grandma made you very sick on purpose, so she's in timeout and can't see you. We don't hurt other people, right?" So we've just been repeating that. My husband's family is pretty split. Everyone's kind of in shock, but he's too angry to care about anyone who doubts our reaction. There are a few people who are saying that she needs help and it's our duty to support her through this, and I'm thinking, no. Our duty is to our daughter, full stop. That woman will never see us again. Daughter and I are going to stay with my parents in Ireland for a while. We're leaving at the end of the month. My husband's all on board with this. He's talking about us moving a few states away just to make sure mother-in-law can't get to our daughter. And the thing is, this could have been so much worse, but my daughter will make a full recovery. She won't remember this. We'll be okay. Update number 2. So my mother-in-law is being charged with endangerment of a child. Our lawyers told us that she probably won't spend any time in jail. In any case, we have a restraining order against her and warned my daughter's preschool. She will never lay eyes on my child again if I can help it. There will be no second chance for her to attempt murder on my daughter. We do intend to pursue a civil case against my mother-in-law for the hospital bill. My daughter and I spent an amazing month in Ireland with my family. My mom spoiled her so completely that my daughter's only asked for Granny, my mother, and she has not mentioned Nana, my mother-in-law, so that's been nice. My daughter has physically recovered 100%, and we're working closely with her therapist to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible for her. She doesn't seem to be suffering any emotional trauma at this point. My husband is also in therapy to help him deal with the trauma of suddenly losing his mom. He's really having a rough time of it, but he's rock steady on the resolve to cut her out though. Update number 3. Y'all, going this long without seeing my daughter has apparently made my mother-in-law lose it. So to recap, mother-in-law intentionally gave my daughter allergen-laced cookies, basically trying to poison her. My daughter spent a week in the hospital recovering, and we cut mother-in-law out cold. She was charged, and she got off with a slap on the wrist. Yesterday, I got a call from daughter's preschool. My mother-in-law tried to pick her up. She told the staff that there was a family emergency. Luckily, I got the advice here to tell the preschool the situation, so they locked down and stalled until police got there. Mother-in-law violated her restraining order, so there may be some legal action, but I haven't been told anything yet. My daughter's fine. She has no idea anything happened. They locked down her classroom and they played a series of noisy games until it was over. We're moving several states away in June, and we're not telling mother-in-law. She'll figure out when we're gone after it's too late to bother us anymore. Update number 4. So my crazy, allergen-giving monster of a mother-in-law somehow found out the day we're moving, and she showed up at our house. She parked behind the moving truck, and she said she wouldn't budge until we agreed to talk things out, and to make it right. The police were called, and she was arrested for violating a restraining order again, which I'm told could result in as much as 1 year in jail. I believe she also has to go to court. Her car was also towed, and the movers finished up, and now we're safely in a new state. All 4 of us, because we recently found out that we'll be adding a new one to our family in January. Mother-in-law does not know. The new house is under an LLC, as suggested. Our lawyer thought that was an excellent course of action. My daughter and husband are going to continue therapy. My husband's going to go to grief counseling because he feels as though his mother had suddenly passed away. He is very adamant that mother-in-law will never see our children, but losing his mom has been very difficult for him. Update number 5. Anyways, my husband works for a large company, offices in multiple states, etc. We told the new location to not release any information about my husband. Don't confirm that he works there, nothing. Well, my mother-in-law called the old location and she played the forgetful old lady card, and she managed to get the number of the new location my husband was transferred to. She then proceeds to call the new location. Well, the receptionist didn't get the memo, apparently, and she gave her my husband's extension. As soon as he picked up, he was treated to ear-piercing wailing. Not talking or crying, just full-on banshee wails. He hung up and she called again and again. She left 12 full voicemails of this before his mailbox was full, and then she switched back to calling the receptionist and wailing at her. My husband was then called to a meeting with HR, and he had to provide copies of the restraining order. Legal is sending her a letter. The police in town have been notified, and IT set up a new extension for my husband. I believe they've blocked her number as well, but it won't stop her. But now, my mother-in-law knows where we move. At least we have security cameras, I guess, which is fantastic. But I feel like she's already ruined the new town. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she showed up at the new town looking for OP. But what a wild story that was, right? Like, there are way too many people out there, guys, that don't take allergies seriously enough. And what OP did was 100% justified. Like, that psycho woman, guys, she baked a batch of cookies, froze them, and was trying to feed OP's daughter every single time they were together, knowing full well that she's allergic to that stuff. Oh, you said your daughter's highly allergic to peanuts and bananas? Well, let me make a frickin' cookie that has both. Like, oh my goodness, guys, just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it does, right? Grandma just takes it to a whole new level of insanity. And guys, I do feel bad that OP's husband essentially lost his mom, but honestly, this might be for the best, guys. I would way rather lose my mom by moving far, far away from her than losing my own child for real life. Right? It only makes sense. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our / entitled people, where clearly people think they can do whatever they want. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's an r/I don't work here lady, where a Karen throws a tantrum and smashes a door only to regret it big time. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.